Hi, I'm Pastor Rick, and this is Straight Talk on Scripture. And I have an interesting thought today. You know, in Genesis 28:16, Jacob, the patriarch Jacob, is fleeing for his life, and he spends the night at this place. And when he wakes up, he says something really cool. He says, "God was here, and I didn't know it." This is my question. How many times has God been invested in your life, has been doing something, has been working behind the scenes, and we don't recognize it because it doesn't feel like God? Maybe it feels like we're being persecuted. Maybe it feels like we have pressure on us that we don't like. Maybe it feels bad. But just maybe God was there and we didn't know it. You know, I didn't become a Christian until I was 29 years old. I was a practicing Jew at the age, 1972, I went to Israel as a practicing Jew to possibly become an Israeli citizen. And although I didn't know God, I traveled to a lot of places where God was, and I didn't know it. For instance, the kibbutz I lived on was within walking distance to the Mount of Transfiguration. I actually climbed the Mount of Transfiguration and didn't know what it was. I only learned about it much later. So I was at a place of great importance and didn't know it. And which leads me into talking about how Jesus took Peter, James, and John up to the Mount of Transfiguration, where he became white, he started to glow, and Moses and Elijah appeared, and Peter just starts babbling because he doesn't realize that he's having a God moment. And so he's just babbling, and he says to Jesus, "It's good that we're here with you, and let's build 3 tabernacles, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." And this part always tickles me. In the middle of while he's talking, the Father interrupts him and says, "You need to be quiet and listen to Jesus." You see, Peter was experiencing a God moment, and because he was just so wrapped up in his own thoughts, he didn't realize that he was being shown something very special. It was a God moment. And the Father had to tell him, stop talking and listen to what Jesus has to say, which he did. And so I want to tell you about an example in my life. A few years ago, I had a moment where God was in it and I didn't realize it. God was doing something in my life, and it felt terrible. It felt like God didn't want to use me anymore. It felt like God was done with me. But God was working humility and patience into my life. And I only saw it in retrospect. And now I look back on it and said, God was with me and I didn't recognize it. This is what I want to say to you. How many of you people listening to me are in a God moment where God is doing something in your life? And maybe it doesn't feel great, but maybe you need to just pray and see the God in the moment, because maybe it's not the devil harassing you. Maybe it's not bad luck. Maybe God is with you and you don't recognize it. And it makes it so much easier to get through something when you realize that God is with you. So this is just something to think about. I'm Pastor Rick. Remember, with Jesus, there's always hope, there's always love. God bless you.